The midnight express cuts through the thickening fog of the Cornish countryside, its whistle echoing like a mournful cry in the stillness of the night. This is no ordinary train journey. For decades, whispers of spectral figures and unearthly occurrences have haunted its carriages, turning it into a vessel of both travel and terror. Tonight, as the clock strikes midnight, the train carries more than passengers. It carries a mystery, one that defies the boundaries of the living and the dead. Enter Detective Clara Blake, a woman with a reputation for solving the unsolvable. Fearless, methodical, and with a sharp intuition that borders on the supernatural, Clara is no stranger to the eerie and unexplained. But even she cannot prepare for what lies ahead on this long, dark ride. What begins as a routine investigation into the disappearance of a wealthy businessman will soon unravel into a tale of secrets, betrayal, and a ghostly presence that has waited decades for justice. Welcome to the chilling story of the secret passenger, ghosts of the long ride. As the wheels of the train click rhythmically against the tracks, Clara Blake steps aboard, unaware that her journey will lead her into the heart of a mystery that blurs the line between the living and the dead. Now turning to the Midnight Express itself, this isn't just any train. Built in the late 19th century, it was once the pride of Victorian engineering, a gleaming symbol of progress cutting through the rugged landscapes of Cornwall. But time has worn its once shining exterior, leaving behind a vessel steeped in history and mystery. Its dark mahogany carriages, now slightly weathered, seem to carry the weight of countless journeys, both seen and unseen. The fog that clings to the countryside tonight wraps the train like a shroud, amplifying its eerie presence. As it snakes through the hills and valleys, the rhythmic clatter of its wheels is the only sound, a steady heartbeat in the otherwise silent night. For decades, whispers of ghostly sightings have followed the Midnight Express. Passengers have reported fleeting shadows in empty compartments, cold drafts in sealed rooms, and faint whispers that seem to come from nowhere. Some say the train is haunted by those who never made it to their final destination, their spirits bound to the carriages forever. Tonight, as the Midnight Express carries Detective Clara Blake deeper into the heart of Cornwall, it's clear that this journey is more than a simple ride. It's a passage into the unknown, where history meets legend, and the line between the living and the dead begins to blur. As the Midnight Express pressed further into the foggy night, the calm of the journey was shattered by an unsettling discovery. Samuel Hargrove, a prominent businessman, had vanished without a trace. Known for his sharp wit and influential connections, Hargrove's disappearance sent ripples of unease through the passengers. One moment, he was seated in his compartment, sipping tea and reviewing documents. The next, he was gone, leaving behind only a half-empty cup and a silence that felt heavier than the fog outside. The train staff conducted a swift but thorough search, yet no sign of Hargrove could be found. His luggage remained untouched, his belongings neatly arranged, as if he had simply stepped out and never returned. The lack of clues only deepened the mystery. There were no signs of struggle, no unusual sounds reported, and no witnesses who could recall anything out of the ordinary. As whispers spread through the carriages, the passengers began to exchange nervous glances. The air grew thick with suspicion, and the once familiar clatter of the train's wheels now seemed to echo with an ominous rhythm. Some wondered if Hargrove had chosen to disappear, while others whispered of darker possibilities. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the Midnight Express was no longer just a train, but a vessel of secrets, where every shadow seemed to hold a story and every silence a warning. With no answers in sight, the passengers' unease turned to fear, setting the stage for Detective Clara Blake to step into a mystery that would challenge even her keen instincts. As the tension aboard the Midnight Express reached its peak, a new figure stepped onto the platform at the next station. Detective Clara Blake, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the unsolvable, boarded the train with a quiet but unmistakable authority. Her sharp eyes immediately scanned the carriages, taking in the nervous glances and hushed whispers of the passengers. Clara was no stranger to mysteries, but this case, with its eerie undertones and vanishing act, was unlike anything she had encountered before. She carried herself with a mix of confidence and skepticism, her presence both reassuring and unsettling. The passengers watched her closely, their unease mingling with curiosity. Some hoped she would bring answers, while others feared what her investigation might uncover. Clara approached the train staff first, her questions precise and probing. She wasted no time in examining Samuel Hargrove's compartment, her keen eye catching details others had overlooked. The blood stain on the edge of the seat, the faint scent of something burnt, the way the air seemed to shift as if disturbed by an unseen presence. It all added layers to a puzzle that was already deeply unnerving. As she moved through the train, the passengers' wariness grew. Margaret Dawes, the housekeeper, avoided her gaze, while Edward Hastings, the ambitious businessman, offered a too eager smile. Harold Murray, the reclusive artist, simply stared out the window as if lost in another world. Clara sensed the tension, the secrets lurking beneath the surface, and she knew one thing for certain. The Midnight Express was hiding more than just a missing man. With every step, the train seemed to close in around her, its creaks and groans almost deliberate, as if warning her to tread carefully. But Clara Blake was not one to back down. She had faced darkness before, and she was ready to face it again, even if it meant confronting something beyond the realm of the living. As the investigation deepened, Detective Clara Blake found herself standing in the compartment where Samuel Hargrove had last been seen. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Her eyes were drawn to the blood stain on the edge of the seat, a dark, almost sinister mark that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. The compartment appeared untouched since Hargrove's disappearance, yet it felt wrong, too still, too silent, as if frozen in time. Clara crouched down, her gloved fingers brushing the edge of the stain, her mind racing with possibilities. Was this the scene of a struggle, or something far more sinister? Her attention shifted to a torn train ticket lying crumpled on the floor near the window. The edges were jagged, as if ripped in haste, and the faint ink of a name was just barely legible. It wasn't Hargrove's. Clara's brow furrowed as she carefully placed the ticket into an evidence bag, her instincts telling her this was no ordinary piece of litter. Then, as she straightened up, she heard it, a faint whisper, so soft it could have been the wind. But there was no breeze in the compartment, no open window. The voice, if it was a voice, seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was indistinct, muffled, but carried an urgency that sent a chill down her spine. Clara paused, her heart pounding, her sharp mind trying to make sense of the impossible. She scanned the compartment again, her eyes lingering on the shadows that seemed to shift ever so slightly. Was it her imagination, or was someone or something trying to communicate? The whisper faded, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Clara's hand instinctively moved to her notebook, where where she scribbled down every detail: the blood stain, the torn ticket, the whisper. Each clue felt like a piece of a larger puzzle, one that was growing more intricate and ominous with every passing moment. She knew one thing for certain: this was no ordinary disappearance. The Midnight Express was hiding secrets, and Clara was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. With the compartment sealed off, she stepped back into the corridor, her resolve stronger than ever. The train seemed to creak in response, as if warning her to tread carefully. But Clara Blake was not one to heed warnings. She had a mystery to solve, and nothing, not even the supernatural, was going to stand in her way. As the investigation pressed on, Detective Clara Blake's focus shifted to the passengers aboard the Midnight Express. Each individual seemed to carry their own secrets, but three stood out: Margaret Dawes, Edward Hastings, and Harold Murray. Margaret Dawes, the enigmatic housekeeper, appeared calm and composed, almost too calm. Her aloof demeanor and sharp, watchful eyes made Clara uneasy. There was something calculated about her movements, as if she were always one step ahead. Rumors among the passengers hinted at her past being shrouded in mystery, with whispers of a scandal that had forced her into a life of servitude. Was her presence on the train merely coincidence, or was she hiding something far more sinister? Then there was Edward Hastings, the ambitious businessman. His polished exterior and confident stride masked a man driven by ruthless ambition. Clara had heard his name before Hastings was known for his cutthroat deals and a knack for leaving his competitors ruined. His connection to Samuel Hargrove was no secret. They had been business partners, but their relationship was far from cordial. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Hastings' charm was a facade, a mask hiding a far darker side. His nervous glances and the way he avoided direct questions only fueled her suspicions. Lastly, there was Harold Murray, the reclusive artist. Unlike the others, Murray kept to himself, sketching in a corner of the dining car or lost in thought in his compartment. His quiet, almost ghostly presence made him an enigma. Clara learned that Murray had once been a celebrated painter, but tragedy had driven him into isolation. His art, now dark and haunting, seemed to reflect his inner turmoil. Passengers spoke of his strange behavior, late-night wanderings, and whispered conversations with himself. Could his eccentricity be a cover for something more, or was he simply a man haunted by his own demons? As Clara pieced together their stories, she realized each suspect had a motive, each had secrets, and each had the means to harm Samuel Hargrove. The question was, who among them was desperate enough to take it this far? The Midnight Express was not just a train, it was a stage, and each passenger was playing their part in a deadly game. Clara knew the answers were there, hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Her next move would be crucial, for the truth was closer than she thought, and so was danger. As the night deepened, an unsettling shift began to take hold of the Midnight Express. Detective Clara Blake, ever vigilant, couldn't ignore the eerie changes that seemed to permeate the air. Whispers, faint and indistinct, drifted through the corridors, as though the train itself had come alive with secrets. At first, Clara dismissed them as the murmurs of nervous passengers, but the more she listened, the more she realized these sounds had no clear source. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, a chorus of voices speaking in hushed tones, their words just beyond comprehension. Flickering lights added to the growing unease. The train's once steady glow began to falter, casting long, shifting shadows across the compartments. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, some muttering prayers under their breath, while others clutched their belongings tighter, as though expecting the darkness to reveal something unimaginable. Clara, however, stood firm, her logical mind struggling to make sense of the inexplicable. She checked the lights, the wiring, anything that could explain the phenomenon, but found no rational cause. It was as if the train itself was resisting her investigation. Then there was the feeling of being watched. Clara had experienced it before. The prickling sensation on the back of her neck, the weight of unseen eyes. But this was different. It wasn't just a fleeting moment of paranoia. It was a constant presence, as though something, or someone, was observing her every move. She would turn sharply, expecting to catch a glimpse of a shadow or a figure, but there was nothing. Only the empty corridor, the faint hum of the train, and the lingering sense that she wasn't alone. As these strange occurrences intensified, Clara's skepticism began to waver. The rational explanations she had clung to no longer seemed sufficient. The whispers, the flickering lights, the oppressive feeling of being watched, it all pointed to something beyond the realm of the natural. For the first time in her career, Clara found herself confronting the possibility that she was dealing with forces she couldn't explain. The case of Samuel Hargrove's disappearance was no longer just a mystery. It was a haunting, and the Midnight Express was its stage. With each passing moment, the tension aboard the train grew thicker, the line between reality and the supernatural blurring. Clara knew she had to delve deeper, even if it meant facing the unknown. The whispers grew louder, the shadows darker, and the truth, whatever it was, felt closer than ever. But one thing was certain: the Midnight Express was no ordinary train, and the journey ahead would test her in ways she could never have imagined. As the tension aboard the Midnight Express reached its peak, the whispers began to take on a more distinct form. Passengers, shaken and pale, started sharing their own eerie encounters with what they called the secret passenger. This phantom, they claimed, had been haunting the train for decades, appearing without warning and vanishing just as quickly. Some said they had seen a shadowy figure sitting in empty compartments, only to find the seats vacant moments later. Others spoke of a cold, unnatural breeze sweeping through the carriages, accompanied by the faint scent of old perfume. One elderly woman recounted how she had once locked eyes with the ghost, a pale, sorrowful face staring back at her before disappearing into the darkness. Detective Clara Blake listened intently to these accounts, her skepticism now tinged with a growing curiosity. The stories were too consistent, too vivid, to be dismissed as mere superstition. As she pieced together the fragments of these encounters, a pattern began to emerge. The ghost, it seemed, was tied to a tragic event that had occurred many years ago, a story of love, betrayal, and untimely death. Clara's instincts told her that the legend of the secret passenger was more than just a tale. It held the key to understanding Samuel Hargrove's disappearance. With renewed determination, Clara delved into the train's history, searching for any records or testimonies that could shed light on the ghost's origins. She discovered old newspaper clippings and faded passenger logs that hinted at a young woman who had once traveled on the Midnight Express, only to vanish under mysterious circumstances. The more Clara uncovered, the clearer it became that this woman was the secret passenger, a restless spirit bound to the train, her presence tied to unresolved grief and a longing for justice. But how did she connect to Samuel Hargrove? Clara's investigation took a chilling turn when she found an old photograph tucked in the corner of a forgotten compartment. It showed a group of passengers from decades ago, including a familiar face, Samuel Hargrove, much younger but unmistakable. Standing beside him was the woman from the stories, her expression soft but tinged with sadness. Clara's heart raced as she realized the truth. Hargrove hadn't just boarded the train that fateful night. He had returned, and the secret passenger was waiting for him. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Clara's focus shifted. The ghost was no mere spectre. She was a witness, a guardian of the train's darkest secrets. And now, with Clara on the verge of uncovering the truth, the secret passenger's presence grew stronger, her whispers now clear and direct. "Find the locket," they seemed to say. "It holds the answers." Clara knew she was running out of time. The ghost's plea was both a clue and a warning, and the Midnight Express was no longer just a train. It was a battleground between the living and the dead, where the past refused to stay buried. With the whispers of the secret passenger guiding her, Clara's search led her deeper into the heart of the Midnight Express. It was in the very last carriage, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, that she made the discovery, a hidden compartment, untouched for decades. Inside lay a trove of forgotten relics, a stack of faded photographs, a weathered diary, and a delicate locket, its surface tarnished with age. Each item seemed to pulse with the weight of history, as though the ghost herself had left them there as clues. Clara carefully examined the photographs first. They depicted a young woman, radiant and full of life, standing beside a man whose face Clara recognized immediately, Samuel Hargrove. The images captured moments of joy and affection, but there was a subtle undercurrent of tension in the woman's eyes, a hint of something unspoken. The diary, its pages brittle and yellowed, told the story in her own words. Her name was Evelyn, a woman who had fallen deeply in love with Hargrove during their travels on the Midnight Express, but their love story was far from simple. Evelyn wrote of promises made and broken, of a betrayal that shattered her heart. Her final entry was hauntingly brief. "He has chosen her over me. I cannot bear it. The train will carry me forever now." The locket, when Clara opened it, contained a tiny portrait of Evelyn, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. It was a poignant reminder of the love she had lost and the life she had been denied. As Clara pieced together the fragments of Evelyn's story, the truth became painfully clear. Samuel Hargrove had been more than just a passenger on the train. He had been entangled in a love triangle that ended in tragedy. Evelyn's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was the result of a betrayal so profound that her spirit had remained tethered to the train, unable to find peace. The discovery of the hidden compartment was more than just a breakthrough in Clara's investigation. It was a window into Evelyn's soul. Her ghostly presence, her whispers, her plea to find the locket. It was all part of a desperate attempt to have her story heard, to ensure that the truth would finally come to light. Clara felt a surge of empathy for the woman who had been lost to history, her life reduced to whispers and shadows, but she also knew that Evelyn's story was far from over. It was a tale of love and loss, of betrayal and justice, and Clara was determined to see it through to the end. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Clara knew the time had come to confront Edward Hastings. With the locket clutched tightly in her hand and Evelyn's diary tucked under her arm, she made her way to the first-class compartment where Hastings had been hiding. The air was thick with tension, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the walls as Clara stepped inside. Hastings sat by the window, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Clara wasted no time. She laid out the evidence before him, the photographs, the diary, and the locket, each one a damning testament to his guilt. Hastings denied nothing. With a chilling calmness, he admitted to murdering Samuel Hargrove. He was going to expose everything. Hastings confessed, his voice low and steady. The fraud, the embezzlement, his accusations would have ruined me. I had no choice. Clara's jaw tightened as she listened, her mind racing. But before she could respond, the temperature in the room plummeted. The lights flickered violently, and a ghostly figure materialized in the corner. Evelyn, the secret passenger, stepped forward, her translucent form radiating a quiet fury. Hastings froze, his composure shattered. "You," he whispered, his voice trembling. Evelyn's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Hastings looked truly afraid. Clara watched in awe as Evelyn moved closer, her presence a silent demand for justice. "It's over," Clara said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "You'll face the law for what you've done, and she'll finally have peace." As the train screeched to a halt at the next station, the authorities were waiting. Hastings was taken into custody, his fate sealed. Clara stood on the platform, her breath visible in the cold night air, and watched as the ghost of Evelyn lingered for a moment, her form fading slowly into the mist. There was a sense of finality in the air, a quiet resolution to a story that had haunted the Midnight Express for decades. Clara knew that Evelyn's journey was complete, her restless spirit finally at rest. But as the train whistled in the distance, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the echoes of the past would linger, a reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. As the chaos of the arrest settled, silence returned to the platform, broken only by the distant hum of the Midnight Express. Clara stood alone, the cold night air wrapping around her like a shroud. She glanced back at the train, its windows dark and empty, as if the spirits that had once haunted it had finally been released. Evelyn's ghost lingered for a moment longer, her translucent form glowing faintly in the mist. Then, with a gentle sigh that seemed to echo through the night, she dissolved into the darkness, her journey at last complete. Clara felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but the cost was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the weight of unresolved pasts. As she walked away from the platform, Clara couldn't help but reflect on the events that had unfolded. The story of Evelyn and Samuel was one of love, betrayal, and the unyielding pursuit of justice, even from beyond the grave. It was a tale that blurred the lines between the living and the dead, where the past refused to stay buried and the echoes of old wounds demanded to be healed. Clara thought about the thin veil that separated the two worlds and how often it seemed to fray, allowing the restless to seek closure. The Midnight Express had been a vessel for such closure, a place where the living and the departed crossed paths in a dance of reckoning. With a deep breath, Clara turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn began to break. The long ride was over, but the mysteries of the world remained, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. She knew she would carry this case with her, a reminder that justice was not always swift or straightforward, but it was always worth pursuing. As the sun rose, casting its golden light over the tracks, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in days. The secret passenger was gone, but her legacy would linger, a testament to the power of truth and the enduring bond between the living and the departed. And as the train whistled one last time, Clara walked away, ready for whatever mysteries the future held. With the shadows of the night fading and the first light of dawn casting its glow, the tale of the secret passenger and the Midnight Express comes to a close. Detective Clara Blake, with her sharp intuition and unwavering resolve, unraveled a mystery that bridged the gap between the living and the dead. Her journey was not just about solving a disappearance. It was about uncovering the truth of a love lost, a betrayal unpunished, and a justice that transcended time. Through her eyes, we saw the thin veil separating our world from the next, and how the echoes of the past can shape the present. The secret passenger, Evelyn, was more than a ghost. She was a force of retribution, a reminder that some stories refuse to be forgotten. Her presence on the Midnight Express became a legend, whispered among travelers and staff alike. But beyond the spookiness and the thrill of the hauntings lies a deeper truth, a tale of love, loss, and the human yearning for closure. Clara's investigation brought peace to Evelyn and exposed the darkness that had lingered for decades. Yet, as the train rolled away and the platform grew silent, one question remains: are ghosts merely remnants of the past, or are they messengers, urging us to confront the truths we'd rather ignore? So, as we step away from this chilling mystery, let's ponder this. What other stories linger in the shadows, waiting for someone like Clara to uncover them? And how many more secrets lie hidden in the places we pass every day, unseen but not unfelt? The world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the answers aren't just in the evidence, they're in the echoes of those who came before. What do you think? Are the tales of ghosts mere stories, or do they hold a deeper truth about the world we live in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more eerie adventures that will keep you questioning the line between the living and the departed. Until next time, stay curious and maybe, just maybe, keep an eye out for the secret passenger on your next journey.